again this year. And by the 11th of January, most of the times we've lost that spirit that we gave that resolution, whether it's to work out, to eat better, to start going to bed, to stay in touch more with our family or friends or whatever it is. By the 11th day of the first month of the year, we are off the plan. And so there's a problem with that. But even deeper than our personal goals and the things that we desire to do, God has created every one of us for a purpose. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about living with purpose. And I've kind of broken down that word into an acronym. And so I would ask you really just even scratch out the word first after pray. Pray first. No, don't pray first, just pray. You know, when we look at the scripture in Thessalonians that talks about pray without ceasing, that's supposed to be something continual that we're to do. No matter what's going on in our lives, we need to be prayerful about it. We need to seek God's direction for everything that He has for us to do, because that's the most important thing. That's why we were put here. We weren't put here for our individual professions, necessarily for that to be our primary goal. It's really what He's going to be able to do with us through every assignment that He gives us and every place that we are and have the ability to touch people. And so I love Matthew 6:6 when it talks about that when we go into that secret place, how He shows up and He rewards us openly. He gives us that reward because we make that time with Him a value and important, and He can really speak to us. And so I know for myself, I'm guilty of, I'll say the prayer on the fly, and when you say the prayer on the fly and you act on the fly, you don't know what's going to fly up in your face that you're going to have to deal with. So the praying also has a component of waiting and trusting Him and realizing that He knows all the things that we can't see. And so He's going to show up in ways that we never know if we just take that moment. You know, I had a decision to make a couple years ago, and I prayed about it. And so I just made the decision that, well, God's not saying no. But I learned in that experience and in that decision that even though He's not saying no, He may not be saying yes. And so we have to be just in tune and plugged into Him to know when it's a pause, it's a no, it's a yes, it's a not now, or whatever it is. So I pray. That's always first and foremost and should be what we do in everything that we do in our lives. And then the next thing is the you. Understand the role of your past and deal with it. I think so many times we don't give the proper weight to the things that we've gone through in our lives, whether it's a childhood issue, whether it's some ugly that's still holding on to us from a relationship, or we've been hurt, or maybe we've hurt someone and we feel guilty about that. There's a role that the past plays in our lives, and so we have to be open to deal with what that looks like and how that's supposed to play out. Sometimes those hurts or those issues, they're not always hurts. Are meant to be a lesson, and sometimes they're a blessing. And so we have to really look to understand what those are. And then once we deal with them, we're able to move past them, because so many times we carry whatever that was with us. And so we're dragging this thing along through life. And sometimes it was just meant to be something that we deal with in that moment. It was not meant to be something that we carry from 1986 to 2016. But there maybe have been a lesson in that, and so we need to understand what that is. And so I've referenced a couple of scriptures. Do not remember the former things, because God is going to do a new thing. He wants to do a new thing with that. And so if our hands are closed and we're focused on what was happening behind us, because you have to have a closed hand to pull something with you, then we forfeit the blessings that can come out of the lessons that He's had for us. And I love that pressing on toward that higher calling, because everything that we do in our lives, every place that we go, every encounter that we have is for a deeper purpose. And so we've got to look to what that purpose means going forward, not so much what it meant that was behind us, or where we are right in that present moment. And I heard someone say, you know, we sacrifice so much of our time for the past that we lose the value in the moment and what can happen in the future. I know that growing up, I was in a very dysfunctional family. I was the only child, but my dad grew up in a very dysfunctional family. And I'm sure that the people raising him grew up in a very dysfunctional family. So if you notice the pattern, it cycles. And so he brought that dynamic into our household. And I made a vow, an inner vow, that no one would ever treat me the way that he treated my mother. So as I stand before you today, I've now been married 3 times because no one will ever treat me the way that he treated my mother. That's right. And if it starts to remotely resemble that, then my desire, this is orange, but it ain't the prison kind of orange. That's not the orange that they put on you go to jail. I don't know. I think I look okay with this color. I don't know how I would look in that other color of orange. So, to me, it's a ministry for me not to try to create prison ministry from behind bars. It's not my intention to hurt anybody or to do anything wrong or just bail. I just don't want to do prison ministry from the inside.
That's right. I love that. I love
it. But in that, God probably has something. Well, in one of the situations for sure, it was the launching pad for the ministry that I have, and it really allowed me to recognize that, which really kind of ties into my next point about recognizing the enemy. So many times people say, oh, you give the enemy too much credit. No, I think many times we don't give him enough credit because he has a plan and a purpose, and it's not a side job for him. I know Carla, is it Carla? Carolyn. She said that she works part-time at Walmart. Well, the enemy doesn't have a part-time job. His full-time job
is to destroy us.
Is to destroy us, to lie to us, and all of those things. And so he got inside my head, and there were some things that were not right. There's no if, and, or but about that. But they weren't so right that I should have made the decision that I made in that situation. And so I have really got to experience him up close and personal, but I didn't realize it at the time because I wasn't where I needed to be with the Lord, so he really could open my eyes and allow me to see that. But what it has done is that he's always surrounding me with people. People will stop me in the bookstore, random strangers, and just start talking about their marriage.
Wow.
And it's so much like what I was experiencing. And these are people that are so frustrated, they're ready to go. And I understand because I'm looking at them thinking, yeah, you're not going to look real good in that orange either. But it's come to a place where I can now encourage people that, you know what, don't leave before your breakthrough. Get into the place with God that you need to be so that he can prepare you and give you the strength to be able to deal with this situation. Because trust me, when you get on the other side of that, and it's Valentine's Day, and you want that significant person in your life that you don't have, and you look at the options out here, then you'll wish that you probably would have gone on and risked the prison orange because it probably wasn't really as bad as you would think. But see, sometimes we get in a situation we don't know that it's not that bad until we're on the other side of it. Now, I'm not releasing the other person for their responsibility.
Right.
I'm not saying that you should be in an abusive situation
Right.
because, to me, I don't believe God has that for us. But what I am saying is that if we plug in and we do what it is that God has called us to do, then he's going to lead us and help us navigate the difficulty in every situation in our life, whether it's a relationship of any kind, no matter what, if it's an intimate relationship or the other things that we have to deal with in our lives. And so, but I know that he used that past that wasn't dealt with in order to fuel the fire to what I was dealing with in that moment. And so when you start to make decisions based on things that happened to you at 38 or 48, that happened to you when you were 8 years old, you're not living in the place that you should be, because our lives should be about living through the windshield of what we're seeing that's ahead of us, and not what's in the rearview mirror. And so, as I said, the enemy, his sole job is to kill and to steal and to destroy. We go to our jobs from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever it is. If you don't work outside the home, then you pretty much are 24/7, but you at least sleep. He never sleeps, he never slumbers. I think of that scripture in Mark that when Jesus healed the demon-possessed man, and he talked about, my name is Legion because there are many. That was in that one man assigned to him. There are many around us, and they are on that job. They know their assignment well. They don't have to have a weekly sales or briefing meeting to know what their responsibility is, because they come armed and ready to take us down if we're not in the place that we need to be with the Lord. So that ties back to praying first and making sure that you're covered. The next P is present yourself as a living sacrifice, and the scripture is Romans 12:1. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable, which is your reasonable service. God has placed us here to serve. And much of what has happened to us, much of what is happening to us right now is meant for his use, for his glory. And so if we can put ourselves in that place to be used by him, it's also, even standing before you sharing my story, there's a place of healing that's going on inside me right now. But unfortunately, as people, we don't like to revisit some of those ugly things. Right. And those are the little secret places that the enemy works on, and he fertilizes and continues growing, so we can't really get the level of healing that God has for us. Because I really have come to understand that God heals us wherever we are right then. We're supposed to grow where we're planted. And so he heals us for what we're able to handle at that moment. When something else happens in our lives, then we're at a different level. And so he can now come from here and raise up to here and heal us to this place. But it's a constant pattern that we have to go through. And so when we allow him to use us for the service, he's able to use some of that service to heal us, to repair some of those broken things in our lives. I read a book once called Betrayal's Baby, and the author is P.B. Wilson. You can't even find it. I let someone borrow it and never got it back, and it's one of my favorite books. And it talks about our hearts are like a mantle, and on that mantle, the hurts in our lives are represented by little clocks. And so for every time in our life that we've been hurt, a clock stops on that exact date and at that exact time, and that clock goes on that mantle. And so when we have all those clocks, and if you visualize that, I'm looking at a mantle and just imagining all these clocks. Oh, when I was 6, oh, when I was 8, when I was 14, when I caught my first love cheating, or when I got out of that relationship, or when I thought I was going to get the scholarship and I didn't get the scholarship. It's not all about relationships. It can be whatever the hurt is, but we have all of these little clocks. And so we need to take that hammer, like on the cartoons, and we need to beat those clocks. We need to destroy those clocks. But we can only do that when we allow God to take over and do that healing in us. And many times he does that through the way that he moves on us and in an act of service. And so I want you to, if you don't know what that looks like for you, really trust him to show you. The O is obey God despite the obstacles. And my favorite scripture is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. Now, it flows so well off your tongue, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. But he is there in the midst. We have to trust him because he does know all things. He knows what we faced. He knows what we're facing now and what we will face. And so if we can position ourselves to hear his voice and to allow him to help us navigate and walk through whatever those obstacles are, we're going to be stepping over stuff. We're not going to be stumbling over stuff.
Right.
And so trust him, obey him, let him work it out, let him navigate, because actually some obstacles are good. Because when he allows us to overcome those obstacles, that's a testimony that we can draw from for the next thing that we may face, or for something that's going to bless someone else's life whose path that we cross. And then surround yourself with success.
Yes.
We talked about being transformed by the renewing of our minds, but how many of us do that? I'm not going to bash Scandal or Empire or being Mary Jane. Somebody needs to free Mary Jane. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to go
Love
there. But what I will say is, what you take in, you give out.
That's right.
And so, what is it that you're taking in? What's feeding you?
Yes.
For me, I'm not married right now, but I don't want to sleep with anybody's husband.
I know that's right.
You know, so I'm not going to be likely to watch the things that glorify that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
my friends tell me, oh, she's smart. Well, the last I checked, smart women don't sleep with other people's husbands.
No.
But that's just my definition of smart. And like I said, some people say that's entertainment. You know, that's between you and God, or whatever it is that you have to do. But what I would say is, make sure that what you're surrounding yourself with is more positive than negative.
And what you eat is what you are.
What
Right.
you eat is what you are. The eye gate, the ear gate, all of that
That's right.
has a place. And I think that I really put that in line with when people say, oh, you give the enemy too much credit. No, I think you give some of this entertainment too much credit that is entertainment.
Okay.
I think we have to be honest that some things just are what they are. And since we don't know everything, some seeds are being sown. You may never sleep with anyone's husband, but you don't know how it may play out in some other way.
Yeah.
And I take that very seriously. And I would rather be too conservative about it than not conservative enough at the end of the day, because I've always realized in most of the things that we do, we can always do a little bit more. It's hard to scale back once you've committed to doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitely if we're praying first, hopefully that means that we're having some quality time with the Lord every day. We're doing some personal development. We're listening to things, books, tapes, lectures, webinars, whatever the things are that are going to give us the place, that are just going to take us to the place that is going to give us the encouragement to be able to do the things that God has called us to do. One of the ministries that I absolutely love is Daily Hope with Rick Warren. I don't know if anybody plugs into him, but he does about a 20-minute little sermon each day. And this, the first of the year, he was talking about Transformed. And you can go on his website and listen to the archives and find it. But he did a whole series on transformation and transforming your life. And now he's on finances. And that's something that God has just really spoken to me about. Get your financial house in order. And that may be a message that you all are receiving, you know, as well. And I've watched the different ministries that I follow. A lot of them are talking about money this year. Now, I follow them for the last few years, and they may have a little prosperity blessing kind of message here and there, but I mean a real focus, even with Gateway. That was our whole, the blessed life, generosity. A lot of ministries are having a financial focus, and I don't know if you know where that's coming from. And I'm not a Bible scholar, I haven't studied this, but with the cycle of the moons and all of these things that are coming, you know, toward us right now, probably later this year, our economy is going to go in a place that we probably have not seen. And so I believe God gives us soft warnings about the things that we're to do so that we're prepared to handle this. Now, we're his children, so if he owns a cattle on 1,000 hills, he can send Elsie and a couple of other ones to slaughter at any time on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to position ourselves, and some of that positioning may be in opportunities that he's given us right now so that we will
Right.
be prepared
Right.
to be able to handle some of those things. So we need to just be cognizant of those things and just be mindful of putting ourselves in a place where success can happen and arming ourselves with the tools that support that. And then the last thing is execute your God-given plan, because he knows the plans he has for us, and they're not to harm us, they're to prosper us and give us hope and a future. And as we execute his plan for our lives, then we're going to reap some of the blessings of the things that we want, because we really need his plan. That's not something that we should take lightly, the plan that he has for us. But along the way, he loves us enough that he blesses us with some of those things that we need, or that we want in the midst of those needs. And so as we walk through this, through these steps, I believe you'll find that you'll have passion in your purpose, that you can live your purpose intentionally, and that you can live it out with a sense of knowing that you're doing what God has designed you to do, and that you're going to be a lamp and a light and a blessing to the people that you encounter. And so I leave you with that.